Eat, sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and today we're going to be talking a little NBA action. So I got my two NBA experts in here, Real Frank Brank, Golfman Paulie. Things are back to normal right now with Frank signing on first and being up in the top left, so I don't have to mess up my normal view of the show here. Not really a great NBA slate here, guys. I mean, we got a lot of injury news, which is something that you're probably going to hear me say every time we do this for the next month until the playoffs start, because we're getting to that point in the season where some teams have nothing to play for. Other teams, are going to start resting guys on back-to-backs, as, we're going to see here with the first game we kind of talk about a little bit. Let's just go real quick and kind of mention that. Like, when you start getting down to this part of the year, Frank, we'll start with you. Do you normally see yourself like playing less volume? Is it normally things where you're waiting later in the day? Like, how does your approach to it change when we get to this part of the season?
More caution for sure. Definitely less volume. I don't like playing NBA after the All-Star break that much. Granted, we had our best run of the season the week after the All-Star break, but just probably a little bit of luck. I don't, like I said, I don't really enjoy playing, this late in the season. So with this many games, I'll give you guys, the disclaimer that I'm going to play my biggest edges and my smaller ones are probably going to get thrown out just for my personal account. I don't enjoy really playing that much volume at this point in the season. The numbers are efficient. And like you said, today there's a bunch of teams on back-to-backs. I think you could see a bunch of guys rest, especially for teams like that are, safely in the playoffs or safely out of the playoffs. There's just not a lot of, there's not a lot of motivation for these guys to play their star players, and then you end up getting screwed on some lines and everything.
Paulie, how about you? Are you pretty much of the same mindset, or how do you handle things at this point of the year?
Yeah, the value is kind of sucked out of the market a little bit at this point of the year, and with all the injuries, it's not like a lot of it's being predictive with guys resting, because a lot of times it's different where, guys listed as probable or questionable, you can kind of guess. This time of year, you're going to have on a slate this big, when you have, I think, 9 games, right? You're going to have 2 or 3 key players just randomly sit that you have no clue about. And that's going to make it a little bit tough, because you could, put yourself in a good position in a game, and all of a sudden the guy sits and the number moves 3 points, and you're kind of, screwed at that point. So it's definitely being a little bit cautious and try to get your money down in a game where you don't expect players to be sitting out.
And I know other than doing a lot of the in-game stuff, you also are somebody who gets down early on things. Like you'll have bets for tomorrow's game, when the lines come out tonight, midnight, or something like that. So I would assume, like, at this point of the year, that's also something that kind of weighs into it for you, because, like you said, you could get down on a game thinking you're in a good spot where you're getting, 2 or 3 points of value in it, and then all of a sudden at 6:30 tonight, the stud player on that team, winds up being out, and now you're, -4 and you're, 1 or 2 points behind where you wanted to be there. Do you find yourself still getting down early at this time of year, or is it more of a, now I'm going to wait for more of the news and, try to find a less efficient, a more efficient line, but not something that's better for us as bettors later on in the day?
Sure, yeah, it's just being a little more selective. So whereas early in the year you might have had a certain threshold to make a pregame play, on the overnight line, it's going to have to be a little larger threshold now, just as a little bit of extra protection for the fact that there's a chance that injury news may pop up.
Yeah, and again, we'll start here right with the first game of the day. You got Boston and Cleveland is the first game of the day here. I actually don't even see a line on some of the books that I'm looking at here, because Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum are both listed as out. That's what we know. Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown, both listed as doubtful. Marcus Smart also listed as doubtful. And then even on the Cleveland side, you got Andre Drummond and Darius Garland, 2 starters listed as out for them, and Tristan Thompson, who would be a guy who you would assume would benefit from no Andre Drummond, also being listed as questionable here today. When we have 1 or 2 variables to kind of work through, it's not that hard. You can look back at, how they play when guys aren't on the floor or off the court, or if that guy missed before. When you have basically 8 of the top, I'm going to say top 12 or 13 players in this game total in the rotation, all being out, doubtful, or questionable, like, how the hell do you even look at something like this?
You don't?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that's like, I guess that's the best answer here to say is like, we're trying to find edges, and we're trying to do that based on things we can predict. When you have a situation like this that's just unpredictable, this is just a game you stay away from, right?
And I know Boston's on the road and on the back-to-back, and you see them at 2-point favorites at Cleveland. That's so low, but the reason for that is all the injuries, of course. Now I have the game at 2.5 and 215.5, so I'm not going to play here anyway. But even if I had an edge, nah, at this point in the year, it's just really not worth it. If I was, around even or something, I've made quite a bit of money in NBA this year. So at the end of the day, it's like, why give back my profits on something, where I have to reach like this? It's just not really worth it to me.
Same idea for you, Paulie, just staying away from this one?
Yeah, staying away from now. The only thing that I may go for, if all those guys are ruled out, I think there may be some value possibly in like a first quarter under, because you're going to be pretty much having all bench players playing in this game, and they're going to be a little bit less efficient. And I think, them starting in the first quarter, you might be a little bit, not rusty, but any of the Boston players obviously played in the back-to-back, and I just think there may be a little bit of value there, but we'll have to wait and see. What are your thoughts on that, Frank?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. It's hard for me to say, Boston's missing 3 or 4 starters. What are the backups going to do? But like I said before, these guys have a tendency to be more efficient because they're playing against worse players, and when you put them in to play against real players or to start, they're a little more timid and they will struggle more. Definitely, the efficiency will go down. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm personally not going to do it just because I just don't see a reason for me to chase on a game like this one. I just don't know, and I can't say for sure. But I think your logic definitely checks out. It makes a lot of sense. You're probably also just going to see less pace in general because, of course, Walker's out and Tatum's out, and these are all ball handlers and good players. So it's you're just not going to see these games, especially Cleveland. Cleveland is, as a 2-point dog, they really don't want to win any more games. So like they could also just really play slow and just kind of, throw in the towel, especially if Boston's going to struggle offensively, which we would expect them to at this point.
Yeah. And that's the reason why we stay away from this game. So we got 8 other ones that we can look at for some value. So let's see if we can find something somewhere else here today. Next one is OKC and Detroit. I'm looking at OKC, 7.5-point favorite, 216 total at the moment. Couple injury things here to look at. Bruce Brown still listed as doubtful. Brandon Knight listed as questionable. And on the OKC side, Danilo Gallinari is listed as questionable. Paulie, what are you looking at in this game? Anything OKC Detroit?
Yeah, there's nothing for me in this game. I'm pretty much spot on, assuming based on the current injury statuses we have there. If it gets ruled out, then there might be a little bit of value, but most likely the market's going to move right away on that. So there really won't be much to do here.
Frank, you said something about Gallo in the pre-show. Did you get news on that questionable? Is he upgraded? What's going on there?
Yeah, it was questionable. I think he's doubtful now, so I'm pretty comfortable that just on a modeling side to say I'm just going to rule him out. Gallo's like a 5-point plus or minus player from an efficiency perspective. He's pretty bad defensively. He's slow. He doesn't move well, but he's damn good shooter, and he does play well offensively. So I just on that news alone, I'm definitely going to like the under here. I think OKC's on the back-to-back, which hurts a little bit, but this game isn't even open at Pinnacle yet. It's circled everywhere else, so you're not going to see the influx of money quite yet as of 10 o'clock this morning as we're recording here. But Gallo is one of the more bigger over players in the NBA. So with him out, he's like plus 3.5 offensively and minus 1.5 defensively. Yeah, I have this game at like 211 to 11.5. So I definitely like
it already got steamed down. It was 215 and went down to about 210 in the last 2 minutes.
Oh, really? I guess my board's just not quite updating.
Yeah, it went from 215 down to 210, 210.5 in most places.
Yeah, we had it at 215.5 before with Gallo listed as questionable. So that definitely tells me there's a good chance he's probably not playing here today. And goes along with the lines of what you were saying with the 5-point move there.
Yeah, so like you said, it's about 5 points. So I have it at 211. And I don't know what you guys are seeing, but at 210.5 or whatever it is, that seems about right to me.
All right, so this is another one where not too much value here. The move would have been to get in before Gallo, but again, this is just kind of goes to show what we were talking about in the early show about how some of these injuries late in the year can really kind of move some of these lines for us. So the next game we have here, we got Indiana going up against Milwaukee. Milwaukee an 11-point favorite, 222 on the total there. Injury news, Kyle Korver listed as out here. Victor Oladipo listed as questionable. Those are the only main changes I'm seeing here. Frank, we'll start with you this time. Anything Indiana, Milwaukee?
Just looking here, 223, 222 is my number. And that's the number I see out there. I don't. So nothing on the total for me, and that's with Oladipo listed as out. It just nothing here for me. I do like Milwaukee a little bit, but I'm not going to lay that number at this point in the season. It's just not worth it to me. And again, if Oladipo plays, then the value's kind of sucked out of that. I think the number is kind of representing like he's going to play, but the total is not representing that. So, I'm not too sure, but my model's pretty high on the Bucks, obviously. Best team in the NBA according to my model. But, I'm not going to play here regardless.
Paulie, anything for you with this one?
There may be a potential play later on the first quarter for Milwaukee here based upon the setups of the two teams here with Milwaukee at home as well. But none of the derivative markets, meaning, the first half, first quarter, really out for any of the games because of all the injuries. So that's going to be something I have to look at later on once those lines get posted.
Yep. So another one that, injuries have kind of messed up for us here today. So let's go to the next game. Next game is the Utah Jazz visiting the New York Knicks. Utah favored by 8, 219 total there. As far as injury news, let's see what I'm seeing here. Not much on the Utah side, nothing really big. Couple things on the New York side we got to worry about here, though. Dennis Smith Jr. remains out. That's been that way. Mitchell Robinson, Kevin Knox, both listed as questionable, and Reggie Bullock was upgraded to probable. So a couple little things there. A couple of those big guys might affect something for New York. Paulie, anything with you on this one?
Yeah, this one's kind of a stay away game for me. I already got burned with the Knicks at home against the Rockets the other day, which was kind of a surprising victory there. The Knicks catching 8 at home, based upon that result, you think would be great, but we've seen the Knicks before let us down in plenty of spots. So this is one where it's a highly variable team, and I'm just staying away because it's pretty much impossible to predict how they're going to play.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Frank, anything with you on here? Like, this is a matchup for New York that I just really don't like. I really don't see how they're going to – I really don't see how they have a path to victory here. With the Rockets, you could always see it because if the Rockets aren't hitting shots, they can beat or lose to anybody. I just don't see them beating Utah here, but 8's a pretty big number.
Yeah, I don't see the Knicks being many teams, especially, some of these playoff teams. Excuse me. But Utah, this number, the total is a little bit inflated in my mind. Smith Jr. is a pace guy. He's definitely an over player, and him being out, I have played some Knicks unders. They went a little bit crazy in that Rockets game. Utah totals have been going up and up and up, but it's interesting because both of these teams are playing much slower over the last week. So it's more of an efficiency thing. The Knicks are listed as, over the last 4 games, 5th in the NBA in efficiency, offensive efficiency. I don't see that continuing. Utah listed as the top most efficient team in the NBA right now over the last week. Another thing that I don't necessarily see continuing. They are good. They're top 10 in efficiency, but they're not the best team, from an efficiency perspective. The Knicks are 28th on the season. So I think this number is just a little bit inflated considering the success that these teams have had offensively as of late. Even though the pace has gone down by about half a second per possession for both teams. So I think the number is a little bit inflated because of that. Sure, we might see some efficiency increase because of the pace slowing down for some teams. That's kind of like a small correlation that can be there. But I have this game at 215.5, and I just think there's going to be undervalue all day here just because of the shooting prowess that they've had over the last week or two.
Now, what are you seeing that in the market? Is it still around 219 or?
Yeah, I just saw 219, I think.
All right, so that's a pretty sizable edge then. If you got it at 215.5, 3.5 points is pretty good.
Yeah, that's a lot for me. I'm playing like one point edge here usually, so I would play that down to 216.5. But like I said, this early market has kind of not really opened, and a lot of these games are still circled. So some of that big money maybe not coming in yet. And, you've seen it in the Thunder game where there was a big move. I don't know if we're going to get that big move here because, like I said, the efficiency has been so good for both these teams. But we would typically see these offenses regress to their true talent, which would mean this total is a little bit inflated given the pace slow down for each team.
All right. And, well, isn't Utah usually a pretty efficient team, though, offensively? I
Yeah,
mean, the Knicks are not
eighth,
usually fifth, but
they're eighth on the season. But, over the last week or two, they're playing like they're the Mavs, and they're not offensively that good. They're still very good, but they're not that good.
All right, fair
and
enough.
Obviously, the Knicks are one of the least efficient teams in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks being fifth is definitely something you would expect to kind of regress to the mean there, which is definitely going to be making them, go lower. So let's talk about the next game. We got Memphis and Brooklyn. Brooklyn favored by 2 points in this one at home. 224 total is what I'm seeing out here in the market now. I don't see any major injury news in this game, though. So it does look like, and now again, I mean, any major new news. You still have, like, Jaren Jackson being out and Brandon Clark being out and Kyrie Irving not coming back anytime today. But for the most part, we're going to see these teams at full strength as we've seen them over the past couple of weeks. So, Paulie, anything for you here, Memphis and Brooklyn?
Yeah, there's a slight edge here towards Memphis in this game, but not really playable at this point. If the line moves a little bit more, I'll probably go into Memphis, but at this point, I'm kind of standing pat.
All right, fair enough. Frank, anything? Now, when you say a slight edge, you actually have your numbers have Memphis favored because they got Brooklyn favored right now. Is that what you're talking about? Or
I pretty much have it as a pick 'em, and right now it's 1.5 in most places. So if it somehow got up to 2.5 or 3, I'd probably play it.
All right, fair enough. Frank, anything for you on this one?
I'm with Paulie there. I like Memphis here. I have this game crossed off personally because I'm having some trouble with this Memphis pace. It's going up and down so rapidly because of their injuries, and it's really hard to nail down what they're going to do. So I got burned on them a couple of times. I'm going to avoid the total here, but I usually don't play sides in basketball in general, and I certainly in the NBA, I usually don't play many games this late in the season on top of that. So I'm a little bit hesitant, but I have this game at like 1, so I think Memphis should be favored by at least a little bit. So especially Brooklyn on the back-to-back. I do like Memphis with Paulie here. I wouldn't even mind. I've seen some like plus 105, plus 110 out there. I wouldn't mind money line either.
All right, so maybe a little slight lean here from Memphis for both of our guys. Hopefully the numbers move in our direction a little bit and we get a better deal on it before tip-off, and then we'll be able to kind of chase it a little bit there. Interesting game here tonight that I'm actually interested in watching. Orlando Magic with their, paced-up ways lately, taking on the Miami Heat. Aaron Gordon still listed as questionable here. Tyler Hero, who's been out. Myers Leonard, who's been out as well. But Aaron Gordon listed as questionable is probably the big thing that makes this one a little bit tough. Let me see what the number is here right now. I have Miami minus 7-ish about and a 218 total. Frank, we'll start with you on this one. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, and I don't have a play here with Gordon out, so I think the total is good. Might have to adjust Orlando a little bit depending on who's playing, but with Gordon out, I have this game pretty much bang on 7, and I think I have it at 218. So nothing here for me, and it's looking like the number looks like to me like Gordon's not going to play, so you might be able to get, if he does get rolled in, you might get some value there on Orlando, but nothing pregame for you.
Paulie, would you agree with that? And also, what's your view on the Gordon thing? Are you thinking this number says he's going to be out too? Because then I may have to go back and adjust some of the daily fantasy stuff if he's definitely
the number they have out here, I think, is kind of have him listed as 50. I think the number will move a little bit either way, depending on whether he gets ruled in or ruled out here. Probably a point either way.
Okay.
But in terms of value for the game, nothing for the full game. The only thing I want to look at was potentially the first half or first quarter for the Heat. They've been absolutely destroying teams against the spread in the first quarter and first half, one at home. So I want to see what the derivative market puts out for that, considering the full game spread is currently at 7. You might, if you can get a first half number around 3.5, and maybe a first quarter number around 1.5, 2-ish, that probably would be playable. But I got to wait to see what the market puts out there.
All right, so, again, this is a time of year where you're not getting these numbers as early as we were getting them, at other points in the season. So I'm glad I have some guidelines there. So if you can get a first quarter around 1.5, first half around 3.5, those are things that Paulie thinks would be pretty good, and we can look to make some money in game on that, or later on when that stuff comes out. Next game here, we got Chicago Bulls taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Timberwolves at home on the tail end of a back-to-back, though. They are favored by 3 with a 229 total. Let's see. Injury news here. Chandler Hutchinson out for Chicago. Lauri Markkanen still questionable. For Minnesota, Evan Turner's the only real name I see there. Nothing that's really going to affect it too much. Obviously Cat out as well, and all the guys that have been there. So, Paulie, we'll start with you on this one. Chicago, Minnesota. Anything you're looking at?
Yeah, there's nothing for me in this game. Minnesota, I think, might be the hardest team to handicap in the NBA right now.
Mm-hmm.
They can go from looking like an amazing team to the worst team in the NBA just because they're so variant now with their style going up and down with all the three-point shooting. Mm-hmm. They're kind of like a light version of the Houston Rockets. The fact that they can win against anyone and lose against anyone. We saw them, come back and beat the Pelicans, and then today they could lose by 30 to the Bulls, and it wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these teams that are up and down and shoot a lot of threes. There's high variance in it. When it's going good, it looks really, really good, and when it's not going good, they could lose to the worst teams in the league. Frank, anything with you, or are you kind of with the same mindset, staying away?
Yeah, I'm staying away because of Markkanen. If he plays, I do like Chicago here. I got the game at 1.5, Minnesota minus 1.5. If he does play, he's probably worth about a point to Chicago, so he's not like crazy good, but I would say he's supposed to be back, but he's still listed as questionable. So if we get a probable at some point this morning, I think I would play Chicago +3. I think you could see that come down to 2, 2.5, 2. So if Markkanen plays, I'm on Chicago, but otherwise I'm out on that game.
So here's an interesting game. Definitely another one I want to watch late night here today. New Orleans Pelicans, who are on the road on a back-to-back, taking on the Dallas Mavericks. Mavericks are favored by 5.5 in this one, 238.5 total. From what I'm seeing here, Kristaps Porzingis is definitely going to be in today. Nothing major on the New Orleans side. We do have a couple questionable guards on the Dallas side, JJ Barea and Seth Curry. So we'll have to see whether or not those guys play. But Frank, we'll start with you here. New Orleans, Dallas, 5.5, and what was it, 236.5 or so? Or 238.5. Anything you're looking at here?
So we played these Pelicans overs at ridiculous numbers the last few games, and they've been winning. So you just really need the points to come through. I will like the over a little bit here. I got it at 241 projected with Curry out and Barea in, but Barea plays like 10, 12 minutes a game, so I'm not too worried about him. If Curry's in, I'll like the over a little bit more, but I would probably still play it here. Pelicans on the back-to-back, which helps because they'll give up more points. Generally, you see teams on the back-to-back suffer about a 3-point disadvantage on the defensive side per game. So I do like, especially in a game with a pace like we're going to see. Now, it's not like last night's game where they were, I think I had the game something like 12.6 seconds per possession. On average was projected. I didn't see what it ended up as, but I would bet it was pretty close considering what the score was. I have this game at 13.5 seconds per possession, but still like the efficiency of both these teams offensively and the pace here. So a little bit of an overlean, but I would certainly like to see Curry back before I play. But I would like it either way.
Paulie, how about you?
Yeah, I have one play in this game. That's going to be Dallas in the first half. I've been playing this bet a lot of late. They're the best first half team against the spread in the NBA. They seem to come out, get the job done early, and then fade in the second half, just like they did last game against the Bulls, right, where they go up, 10 points at halftime, easily cover the first half, then they get blown out in the second half and lose by 10 to the Bulls. So, but with New Orleans being the back-to-back, coming out a little sluggish possibly, after the loss to Minnesota last night and Dallas kind of getting back closer to full health, you're probably going to see a first half line around -3, which I'll definitely be playing.
All right, so if we can get -3 or better on Dallas in the first half, you'd be on board.
Yep.
All right, I like that bet. I'm going to put a little asterisk next to that one there too. All right, so now we got the last game of the slate here. We got the Washington Wizards going on and taking on the Portland Trailblazers. Blazers at home, favored by 7.5. Biggest total on the board here today at 239. It looks like Damian Lillard is finally going to be back here for Portland, so that's good news for them. On the Washington side, it looks like Thomas Bryant is going to be out. I have him listed as doubtful here today. So, Paulie, we'll start with you. Anything you're looking at, Washington and Portland?
Nothing for me in this game, Benny.
All right. Frank, anything for you on this one?
I'm gonna like the over here a little bit. Washington on the back-to-back, Lillard back. The only thing I'm hesitant is what Portland's gonna look like there. They've been going faster the last few games without him, I guess. So it's a little bit strange to see that they're almost a half second faster, and Washington's been fast all year, and they're going faster as of late. My model has liked Washington in general. So a little bit of an overlean here on another big total, but we've just been seeing these totals, especially as of late, where teams are just flying at the end of the year for some reason and really getting after it offensively. Maybe, the defensive effort is waning down as these guys get tired, but, I'm definitely going to like the over here a little bit. I'd like to maybe see a game with Lillard, but, I wouldn't blame anyone for playing over here at 239.
Now, I don't know, have either of you guys done any research on some of these huge total games and the percentage of how often they're going over or under? Because I know somebody did something, I was reading an article about it in baseball last year, where somebody was talking about, when it gets over, I forget what the exact number was, like you look at all the games that had a total of like over 12 runs, they were hitting at like a 65, 66%, like something crazy where they were going over. It seems to me, at least lately in basketball, we've been seeing some of these really big totals, but they all seem to be blowing by them. Like it's, you get a 247 total yesterday. Normally I'm like, you got to be crazy to play a 247 total, but I guess we're all crazy because we all played it yesterday. And with 10 minutes left in that game, we only needed like another, 18 points to get over that total. And I think it ended at like 270 total or something like that. So it even blew by the big number there. But have you guys looked at it at all? With some of these huge totals and the percentage of how often they're going over or under or anything like that?
So for the baseball thing, I'll just warn you that those are almost all exclusively Coors Field games.
Well, that was a big part of the sample size. I agree.
So you have to be careful with baseball just because there's one stadium that lends itself to scoring 25 runs. So, it's kind of tough to gauge from a baseball side. Now, I haven't done the research on just specific NBA stuff. I would imagine the closing line at any point value is pretty damn efficient, and we're just trying to beat it to the number. So you would almost have to look at like what the open is and if it goes up or down depending on where it starts. That being said, I have noticed from my side to have a tendency to play unders on super low lines and overs on super high ones.
Right.
Now, part of that could be because I do weight in recent data and, maybe the market is more resistant to regressing teams back to the long term, which I also do. But if you're going to use season stats in any given situation, you're going to see a lower, a regression towards the mean, whether it's a super low total being a little bit elevated or super high total being a little bit under. But I have a tendency to, like I said, weight in the more recent data, which will then lend itself to maybe having an edge on these extreme totals. I will say that it is difficult to project these extreme totals. There's a lot more variance, like Paul was talking about with Minnesota. You tend to have these teams like the Rockets in Minnesota, the Pelicans that are super high paced, and you really need the shots to go down. And you could see Pelicans score 105 points on a given night or 150 points on a given night, depending on how the shots go down, because the pace is almost always there. So you really have to kind of just swallow it and hope a little bit. Whereas, like we said, with Utah, you're getting an incredibly consistent team that runs at an average pace that's good offensively and defensively. So it's just, it really is, you kind of just have to embrace the variance where you could play a Pelicans over 3 or 4 games in a row and not win any of them just because the 3-pointers didn't go down. So it is tough, especially this time of the year to kind of swallow that. But as of late, I've been winning them. So, it's not the worst thing,
Well, I saw you shaking your head a couple times there with what Frank was saying. So I would assume you kind of agree with where he was going there.
Yeah, I agree with the same thing. There tends to be a little bit of market resistance whenever you get like an outlier number, meaning a super low number for an under or a super high number for an over. It seems like you're just you kind of see the same thing like in the stock market too. Once the price gets certain gets to a certain, bottom or height, there just kinds to be like just a little bit of resistance there. And I think you see the same thing in the betting markets here on over unders.
Yeah, and that's a good analogy there too with the stock market as well, because a lot of this is, based on momentum and perception, especially with the numbers, just like the stock market is. So, with that being said, we could all go look and see. I think today was one of the good days for our portfolios to make up for the -3 or -4% that we all lost yesterday. So that'll be good there. So this way we have some extra money to throw down on some of these lines. Now, again, if you guys want to get this information every day, you can go over to elitesportsbetting.com, sign up for the VIP package. We try to bring you a different sport every day so you guys get a feel of, of what we're offering over there. But these guys are putting these same NBA plays up every day. They do the same kind of analysis for NCAA right now. We got guys that do MLB. We got guys that do MMA. We got guys that are doing, basically every sport out there. These guys did the golf show yesterday. Make sure you guys go check that out on the YouTube channel, Up and Down. What's the golf one this weekend?
It's a Bay Hill Invitational. It's down there in Orlando. It's got a pretty decent field.
Yeah, so they go over some of the, some of the matchups, some of the pairings where you can get some 1v1 kind of stuff right there. They go over some of the guys that like to win some of these tournaments, where they find the value at, and, kind of dig deep into all the stats. So definitely make sure you guys are taking advantage of that. Take advantage of this. Take advantage of the free lunch money show that these guys are on, with Tommy and Rob on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Plenty of information out there to help you guys make some money. So make sure you get over to elitesportsbetting.com and sign up. Helps us keep our jobs, so we kind of like that as well. So for Frank, for Paulie, this is Benny signing off for another episode of The Opening Line.